your Chargers linebacker, Daiyan Henley, and you're tuning in with Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner here with you from the LA Football Network. If this is your first time tuning in the show, make sure to hit that like, subscribe button on YouTube. And also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Happy Saturday morning to everyone that is joining. Hope you all are doing well. Dan Wolkenstein is still on vacation. Technically, today is the wedding day that he is attending up in Seattle. Was trying to coordinate some time that I could do this with him, but I know as far as us getting into the nitty gritty of the NFL draft, because it is fast approaching here on April 23rd, at least wanted to do mock draft 1.0 to get things started. And of course, today is being dubbed Saturday morning mock draft in homage to the childhood of the 1980s, the childhood of the 1990s, us growing up and turning on the television at this hour and watching our favorite cartoons, because there were a plethora of them. If you were in the show, in the comment section, let's start off with this before we get jumping into the mock draft and all the draft questions that we'll have over the next hour. Favorite Saturday morning cartoon? What was it? There was a plethora of them. I'm sure that X-Men is probably going to rule the majority of this chat, but there were a number of Saturday morning cartoons that we all got up and we watched as kids. What were your favorites? Let me know in the chat. Also, as Dan Wolkenstein loves to talk about, what is everybody drinking this morning? Energy drink, coffee. I know it's 10:30 on the Pacific Coast right now. Anybody who's watching this on the East Coast is probably saying, Jake, what are you talking about? Saturday morning mock draft? Are you kidding me? I've already got my Traeger fired up. I'm working on dinner as we speak. Ended up being a little bit later of a show than I originally intended for, but nonetheless, still Saturday morning mock draft. Let's see. Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon went hard along with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yes to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was huge for me as a kid. I actually had all of the VHS sets of I want to say it was maybe like the first 3 seasons that they had the show. But when I was 5 years old, I was Donatello for Halloween. I was obsessed with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Unfortunately, they haven't really gotten the magic back since the original feature film, which is kind of a bummer. And even with all of like the retreads that we've seen, and now all the rumors of the possible live action, resurgence of the film, we'll see if that ends up coming to fruition. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I still have my original Nintendo and Super Nintendo, and I have the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, the second Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, and then Turtles in Time for Super Nintendo. Super addicted to those for sure. Let's see. Pokemon, yes. Let's see. Anything as long as I made a huge bowl of cereal, that's perfect. It doesn't take much to make you happy. Just put a bowl of Frosted Flakes in front of you and you're going to enjoy it. Let's see. Batman Forever was super dope, says Emmanuel Solanda. Crazy enough, Batman Returns and Batman Forever were the two that I watched the most. I'm a huge fan of the original with Jack Nicholson as the Joker, of course. Still think that Michael Keaton is just king as it relates to Batman. Christian Bale being a second could be 1A, 1B, however you want to slice it. But Batman Forever was, I think, just at that point in time for where I was, that one and Batman Returns were the ones that always got more rewatchability for me as a kid. Animaniacs, absolutely, definitely. Hugo Boss coming in with Sunday morning cartoons, but we'll still allow it in this conversation because I can relate. The Sunday morning slate on Nickelodeon that was Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy. I don't know how you can get any better than that. It's crazy growing up though now. If you go back and you think about it, that when Ren and Stimpy came on television on Sunday mornings, that would have been, if I was remembering the time slots correctly, that would have been like, because I want to say everything started at 10, which means that Ren and Stimpy was coming on at 11 o'clock. How that show got on television as it did when we were kids on Nickelodeon at 11 o'clock on a Sunday is absolutely unbelievable. You watch that show as a kid and you don't really understand or see all of the innuendos that are in it. You watch it as an adult, it is extremely, extremely different. And it still blows my mind that they were able to get that on television back in the day. What else we got here? The Power Rangers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had the crossover. Oh, absolutely. It was iconic. For sure. For sure. That was towards like kind of the end of like the peak of both shows before they really started going in different directions. G-Force, yes. Hey Arnold, absolutely. That was kind of like that next generation of Nicktoons that was out there. Let's see. Oh, Batman Beyond the show. Yes. I mean, first of all, the Batman the Animated Series is pretty much undefeated. But Batman Beyond, I only got a chance to watch a little bit of that growing up. It didn't click with me as much as the Batman Animated Series did. Rocko's Modern Life was one of my favorites. Didn't necessarily debut in the morning slate, but this one ended up becoming one of my favorite Nicktoons as well. And I think it was because at the time, I was a little bit older when it was coming out, and I was understanding the jokes that were happening in that a little bit more, and I still thought it was funny. But Rocko ended up being a great, great series as well. Transformers all day, every day. I got to ask, Francis, in the original Transformers animated movie, how pissed off were you when Optimus Prime went down? Because you are the rest of the world, if the answer is yes. Yeah, Transformers, big one on Saturday mornings, for sure. Ren and Stimpy should have been on Adult Swim. Well, didn't it eventually get on Adult Swim? The only thing is Adult Swim didn't exist back in the early 1990s. But I get your point. Yes, it should have. Or maybe it should have started on MTV at that point in time, because you had Beavis and Butthead during that time. Maybe could have thrown this one in there as well. But yes, and to Top Flight, what is up, man? It's been way too long since you and I have had a conversation with one another. We need to get on that, especially because it's draft time. It's good to hear from you, man. Thank you so much for coming in here. Okay, so we're going to fire up the mock draft machine here in just a couple of minutes. Obviously wanted to, it's a little bit of an impromptu show. Didn't get a chance to get an announcement out for this, but I wanted to get things going as it relates to getting our first mock draft out, because Dan and I's expectations that we are going to have 3 iterations of this over the next coming weeks, and wanted to at least get 1.0 going so we could start to tinker around, see what kind of fun we could have in certain mock draft scenarios. And of course, things are changing now with the first wave of free agency in the rearview mirror and with the pro days taking place. And you're starting to get a good idea as far as how the board is going to go majority-wise in the first round. So before we get going on that, I want to try to just answer just a couple of your questions. And of course, I'll try to answer them as we go through the 7 rounds of the mock draft. You see how I said 7 there? You see how I said 7 there? Tells you I'm going to execute a trade. Tells you I'm going to execute a trade. So maybe I just buried the lead a little bit in there. I'm going to see what I could possibly make forth, or at least, I'm sorry, not 7 rounds. I'm going to at least get the Chargers an additional round pick in the first one. So we'll see how this ends up going. But hit me with some of your Chargers questions before we get everything started, going through some other comments here that I have missed. True, it should have been on MTV as it relates to Ren and Stimpy for sure. Peak Yu-Gi-Oh! I had so many cards, the strongest decks, and I never knew what happened to my collection. So upset how much value I lost on. I never actually got into the card games as a kid. I grew up in the generation of like the Magic era. My era was more Pogs. That was like the big craze that everybody was in when I was going to school. And I never ended up getting into the card games. But I feel bad for you on how much value you lost out on for sure. Okay, so answering a couple of these questions that I see are starting to come through. Do I see Emmanuel Pregnon as a reach at 22? Would a trade down help the value? That is a great question, because as we go through the mock draft, and I'll get into this in more detail, there's going to be 4 different scenarios that I'm going to put forth that the Chargers are really going to go into this as it relates to their overall strategy, position, value, depending on what it is that ends up coming down the pipe, what players fall to them at 22, what their ultimate strategy is going to be. Do I see Pregnon as a reach at 22? To answer that question right now, it's not far off. I'll say that much. It's not far off. I think that when we get past Ioane as the top guard prospect that everybody wants, the shoe-in player that if he happens to drop to 22, that's the card that you run up on, I think you're going to see some things change here as it relates to the value of the board. And whether we're talking about players of Emmanuel Pregnon or we're talking about players like Chase Pasantis, I think you're going to see them rise up and maybe go a little bit further up the board. And again, when you get to this 22 to 32 range, this is where it kind of gets interesting, because you have the fringe first round, second round grades on certain players. How valuable are they going to be? What's their value going to be? How is their value going to elevate, especially when you get like 2 weeks out from the draft? Because it always happens. We always see it happen every single year. It's not far off as far as the reach. I will say that much. Let's see. Hugo Boss, DJ has gotten the last 3 mock draft 2.0 correct. Do you think he'll be right again and we get Sadiq? Again, this will go into one of the scenarios. I call this the wild card scenario for the Chargers, whether it's Kenyon Sadiq or any other skill position player, depending on how the board falls to them. And the reason that I bring this up, and I'll elaborate a little bit more, is we've kind of already seen it in the Chargers free agency moves, and especially in moves that they were reportedly in on as it relates to wide receivers. It may kind of tip the cap as far as what they could be thinking of. And you have to remember, again, this is a different offensive coordinator with Mike McDaniel now. So draft strategy, I know that would not be the top one that people were thinking of. And as far as getting Kenyon Sadiq, definitely a value for sure. It's definitely a luxury, no question. But this will be the wild card scenario. And I'll get into that in a little bit. Let's see. Top one, yeah, Pogs. I had like 8 slammers. Absolutely. I never. It was such a weird craze that almost felt like it was here today, gone tomorrow for Pogs. But man, did those blow up. It was like every chance you got, whether it was lunch break or it's like if you had a bathroom break and you happen to just like meet your buddies, like, hey, let's play a game like right now. It didn't matter. It was just huge back in the day. Gray Zabel was considered a first round reach until he wasn't. That was the consensus. And you go back to the center class of last year, excuse me. Gray Zabel got elevated for a number of different reasons, just from the standpoint that he was versatile enough in his position capability and what he was able to play in. And you've seen a lot more examples of that, namely with like Brian Parker in this class. But you see a lot more players that are getting tried out at different positions, and namely center being one of them for some of these interior offensive linemen. But in the big picture of Gray Zabel, there was such a diminished center class that happened going into last year's draft, whether it was from surprise players returning or players suffering injuries that they had to end up just taking another year from and going back to college for. And so the center class was really weakened by a lot of those factors. But Gray Zabel was like the standout of all of those. And I get your point. Until he wasn't, that's kind of where I was going with my Emmanuel Pregnon comment. But I'd say that he's turned out all right for Seattle over there. I'd say he's turned out pretty good. Is there a lengthy, bendy edge that's in free agency that we can replace for Oweh? I'll admit to you, right now it's kind of bleak. It's kind of bleak. If you're the closest you could probably say that is going to offer you any type of athletic ability like that would probably be Clowney, but the options are not the best as it currently stands right now. And that's where obviously priority for edge in this class is really going to have to jump up for them. As I'll say later, the premium is going to be put on the trenches for the Chargers, both on the offensive side and the defensive side for the ball. So the bendy type athletic edges that you're looking for to replace Oweh free agency, there's very few, if any, that are really viable options at this point in time. But that's where you're going to look for your future beyond Khalil Mack to find your future bookend with Tuli Tuipulotu right now. Seems like there's a lot of bigger edges who aren't so bendy in this draft. Yes and no, because you look at the athleticism from, let's say, like your premier edge rushers, like Ruben Bain, who can obviously bend. Screw what you see about the arm length, like he can bend. I know there's been some talk about like David Bailey and some people's scrutiny of whether or not he can bend. He can do it. If you're just looking for some of those guys that come in with that type of flexibility, like they're there. I think the great thing about this edge class in general, as far as why it's so deep, is because you have kind of like, tell me what your flavor is. You have guys that can win in a multitude of ways, whether it is from their straight up athleticism, strictly just because of bend and power and being able to move around, offensive linemen, or you have other ones that are very technique savvy, that are able to use their handwork very well in getting around it. They might not have the best athleticism, but they can find a way to get around offensive linemen. Or you have your ones like Kelder Falk, who isn't the most athletic, definitely didn't have the sack production in college, but he knows how to set the edge. He is great against the run. You cannot take that away from him. So it really is kind of just a choose your flavor type of mentality. There's more than one way to get to the quarterback if you're an edge player, that's for sure. If Sadiq is there, we run up the card. Aronde was a former receiver, so we can put him in multiple wide receiver routes. I'll say this. I don't think that anybody's going to refute that they love what they see from Sadiq. But you'd have to tell me who is off the board at that time to really sell it to me. Yes, this would be a value for sure. But again, we look at free agency, the holes that are still there, the way that the Chargers approached free agency, namely to do a little bit more on the offensive line. There is still work to be done, no question about it. And from the standpoint that Khalil Mack is only going to be with this team one more year, you have to find your future alongside Tuli. So again, I'm not against the Sadiq pick, but you'd have to tell me who's off the board in that scenario for that. Do I think that we take a center on day 2? I know we got our center, but with the way that his contract is set up, I feel like taking a center in the 3rd round is not a far off option. You know what? What you have done with the Tyler Biadasz signing is you have given yourself a lot more flexibility for this upcoming draft. And it was great because you were in a position to where you could think to yourself, like, okay, back during the time when it was Tyler Linderbaum or bust for Chargers fans, thinking about that type of scenario, if you didn't get him, you start thinking to yourself, well, okay, you may have to draft a center higher than you were expecting. And now the way that everything's played out, the contract that you got Biadasz on, you can now wait really until day 3 to get a center. Would I be surprised if they attacked it before then? Yeah, considering what other needs that they have to fill on. Having someone who's going to essentially be your developmental center for the future, I don't think that you attack that before day 4. But the Chargers have done a good job in that department for giving themselves that type of positioning, and with their priorities that they still have on the roster, not needing to attack that one specifically until day 3. Any chance for Kyle Kennard? I expect a better year from Kyle Kennard. I expect him to come in heavier into camp. I expect him under, especially another year of tutelage with Mike Elston, with Khalil Mack being in the locker room. I think he's actually going to get more opportunities now, especially when you look at the roster, the way it's constructed. I'm not really sure if and when Bud Dupree is going to make the final roster come the summertime, again, I was going to think that he was going to be in that lump of cuts with Will Dissly and Mekhi Becton when that happened, but that wasn't the case. I think that they did that from the standpoint that if you did do that at that point in time, literally your only edges on the roster would have been Thule and Kyle Kennard. And so I think it was for more of a standpoint to see what they have with their depth while they were getting the contract for Khalil Mack taken care of. And then, of course, see what you come out of the draft with in this particular scenario. So I think it's a wait and see on that. But for Kyle Kennard's expectations, I do expect a better year or two from him. I really liked what I saw from him in college as a pass rusher. I think he is still limited as that situational third down pass rusher because that's his bread and butter. That's what he does best. But I think as far as his opportunities and how he's going to pay off those opportunities, I think you're going to see a nice improvement from him in year two. Okay, so a couple more before we'll fire up the mock draft machine. Now that we got Biotic, I think that we can draft a center in the 4th or the 5th round. But my prediction as far as the 1st round goes is that we are getting Big Vega. Hugo Boss, I would love to share your optimism. I really would. And I think everybody else would as well. This would be the pipe dream scenario. This would be that Rashawn Slater-esque type of fall to the Chargers when nobody thought that there was any chance that the Chargers could take him when they ended up getting him. I wish I could share the optimism, though. I really do. I really do. Ortiz has been a wizard in the 5th round. Tariq Still, Cam Hart, Aranda Gadsden. Is there a player day 3 that you would love for the Chargers to get? Day 3. I mean, if you just think about, again, if we went to the center department, whether that's 4th or 5th round, honestly, you can interchange that however you want, depending on who's there. I know a lot of people have around like a 4th or a 5th grade on Jake Slaughter. I've just been I know I'm in the minority. I know not everybody has been on the Jake Slaughter bandwagon. But he has been one of the most consistent centers in college football over the last 2 years. I honestly think that if you're putting him into a scenario where he's not coming in and he's not starting, is going to be the best thing for him. But as far as a developmental center for the future that you can start to bring in and possibly use as an emergency case scenario, that would be one easily for the trenches that you're going to add to your depth. And I think that he's going to develop into a fine center at the next level in the NFL. You start thinking about other positions that the Chargers have kind of addressed in free agency. And so what does that mean? That they may have given themselves the luxury of waiting on for day 3. Corner is an option on that. That could honestly be either day 2 or day 3, but depending on how the board falls, I could see either for that. Tanner Kazol from Houston as a tight end prospect. I started kind of like looking back into this as far as the tight ends that Mike McDaniel had in Miami. And he essentially had 3 guys who could receive and 1 guy who could block. And as of right now, with Tucker Fisk, you got the 1 guy that can block. You've got you obviously have Aranda Gadsden as your pass threat catching tight end. I think that you could actually find another good day 3 pass catching tight end option that's not going to take a bulk of the catches away from him. So that could be another target, but I really like what I've seen from him. You talk about just a catch radius, great hands, contested catch type of guy, which is something that you've seen the Chargers kind of geared towards for their tight ends and wide receivers over the last couple of years, because that definitely fits in the Aranda Gadsden type of mold for what he was able to do in terms of contested catches. But those are a couple for day 3. Again, it's a number of options that they could go to because of what they've already addressed in free agency, but it'll be an interesting situation to see at that point. Okay, so I think right about now, we're going to fire up the mock draft machine. Let me just share everything here. Okay, so the way that this has fallen, I may have gotten ahead of myself. I may not be I may not be executing the trade down scenario that I talked about, because this actually is great in terms of feeding into my 4 scenarios that I was going to speak on. And so I feel like I have to take this opportunity to do so. Number one, trying to keep it as realistic as possible for this scenario playing out. Again, I don't think, as much as I would love to see Vega here at 22, this is no question. Get it on the card as fast as you can, gun your DeLorean to 88 miles an hour, get up to the podium and announce this and get it over with. This would be the slam dunk pipe dream scenario for the Chargers. But you go back up this draft board, and for the other teams that in this particular scenario, so this is one of the hurdles that Ioane has to get past in Baltimore. And personally, I think Spencer Fano is going to go higher than 14, which is why I put the Baltimore as a specific hurdle for them to get past Vegas. I don't see Ioane getting past Baltimore here. Same goes for Detroit. Even though I know they took Jermon McCoy here, I foresee if the board fell to them in a similar type of fashion, Ioane was on the board, I don't think that they pass him up there. Same thing goes with Pittsburgh. They obviously lost one of their best guards that they've had into free agency. They need to find a suitable replacement for that in Aaron Rodgers last year. So given that, I just don't see that he gets this far. And like I said, I want to try to keep it as realistic as possible. Now, speaking on that same realistic term, do I see a world where Akeem Mesidor is still on the board and Keldrick Falk has gone before him? I do not. I do not. But this is the way that the board fell in this case. I'm going to take the more realistic scenario. Again, I think that Akeem Mesidor should be gone by pick 15, personally. But I know that we were talking about him, and I know there's questions right now in the chat just between, TJ Parker, Zion Young, R. Mason Thomas, Cassius Howell, who I'm a big fan of. I would probably say, if we were talking realistically here, who's going to be here at 22, it's going to be TJ Parker. You're probably definitely going to see Zion Young, even though I would probably say maybe that's a little bit too high for him. You probably get him more in a trade down scenario for that. Same goes for R. Mason Thomas. Cassius Howell, I think, is, even with the shorter arms, I still think he's going to be gone before you get to the Chargers pick at 22. So in this particular scenario, just because it fell this way, again, we talk about the pipe dream scenario, but the realistic, more probable scenario that I see that the Chargers going is attacking the interior, or the defensive line, and in this case, the edge position. Give a first-round pick to Mike Elston. Watch what he's going to be able to do with someone, in this particular case, like Akeem Mesidor, which I think is just a huge win, regardless of the fact that he's going to be 25. It does not matter. His pass rushing skills are legitimately NFL ready. He has ridiculous, tenacious pursuit and speed to the football. And to say that you could possibly have him and Thule for running alongside each other for the next 5 years, I think that would be huge for this defense. I think that they would make anybody, I would think that they would make everybody on the defense better in that particular stance. So in this particular scenario, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Akeem Mesidor. So let's see how everything falls here in round 2. Okay, so Malachi Lawrence is another one that I is another pass rusher in this class that I absolutely love. And again, I don't foresee him dropping all the way to this position for the Chargers, even though from a value standpoint, that's how it stands right now. But this is how it's going to go with round 1, round 2 for the Chargers. Either you're going to address the offensive line, or you're going to address the edge positions. That's how I foresee the most probable scenarios going. So take whichever scenario you want, whether it's round 1 or round 2. Each one of these positions should be of the target. So in this particular case, let's see, number 1, who's still on the board from an offensive line standpoint. Rutledge is there, Sam Hecht is there, Connor Lew's there, but obviously with the acquisition of Taylor Biotish, you don't need to target a center position at this point in time. Same goes for Slaughter, same goes for Logan Jones. And then let me just see about the trade scenarios to see where they're at. I believe I know exactly where I'm going to go with this pick, but let's just see what the possible trade scenarios are. What I want to trade back with the Arizona Cardinals at 65. Could probably pick up an additional 4th or 5th there. But let me look at the rest of the board right now, because again, I think that if the Chargers missed out on addressing the remaining needs on the offensive line right now, or let's say before the end of round 2, that would be a mistake. The way that you have built it up as of now, and the remaining moves that you still have to invest in it, you have to do this now. No question about it. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to, all of a sudden I'm like trying to get back to the players here. So if I just looked at the interior offensive line right now and what's left on the board for me, Kalen Rutledge is the clear option here, not just for value, but in terms of guard. If I start going up here, because you can see Jennings Dunker was taken right before the Chargers to the Eagles at 54. I think the guards really just started coming off the board. Here's Chase Basantis here at pick 47 that came off the board. That would have been a nice one if he ended up falling to 55. So and again, maybe I kind of got ahead of myself because I was actually expecting that I was going to execute a trade back in round 1, but given who fell to them at that point in time, I decided to shift gears. And this is what we get in round 2. I think you can honestly look at, here's the third scenario as far as the most beneficial. Trading back for the Chargers, whether it be at 22, whether it be at 55, I think that there is no better chance that the Chargers have in trading back this year than what they have right now. From the standpoint that they only have 5 picks, from what we know of Joe Ortiz and not only wanting to draft starting caliber talent, but to really build the depth of the roster, which he has done such a good job of doing over the first 2 years, he's going to want more swings at the bat. And I think at some point here in the first 2 rounds, whichever one you want to say, I think that he's going to execute a trade down one way or another to acquire more draft capital. You get another 4th round pick at some point, or you get an additional 5th round pick back from the Odafe Oweh trade, is going to be huge for you in the long run for how you're going to try to build out the rest of this roster and still the number of position needs that you have. But in this particular case, for how the board has fallen with who's available, I have to attack interior offensive line right now. So it's Kalen Rutledge out of Georgia Tech. Absolute mauler, but I think for what the Chargers can build with what they want to do, again, you talk about the attitude that Jim Harbaugh wants. Rutledge is that type of guy who can bring it to you. Some people might say is like, that's not the fit for Mike McDaniel's offense. And, maybe, but I thought he looked pretty damn athletic at the combine. I think that he could do, if you've watched this film, I think he can do exactly what you need him to do. I think he would benefit in stepping in at left guard immediately next to Rashawn Slater and plugging him next to Tyler Biotish. I think you could actually create a mauling left side of the offensive line in that case. Okay, so now it gets interesting to round 3, because what do you start thinking of that the Chargers are going to attack? What's really kind of the biggest needs that you could say would be beyond edge and offensive line? And you could really go a multitude of different ways here. You could say, okay, is there a benefit? Is there a luxury for the best wide receiver that's on the board? Is there interior defensive line, which I still think that they need to do to continue churning that depth along there? Could you go corner depending on who is on the board at this point in time? So let's take a look and see who we have here. I'm going to start off. It's not coming down for me. There we go. I'm going to start off with interior defensive line. So Rashawn Benny immediately jumps out. Michigan familiarity with Jim Harbaugh. I think this would be a really solid place for him. Same thing with Dante Corleone. I think that right around this range of like the 3rd round, probably a little bit later, maybe fringe third round, fourth round pick for him would be appropriate. I know he's rated here at 125, but I think that Chris McKellen is going to go higher than his positioning here. And I consider him to be off the board on day 2 for sure. Let's see. With that being said, so I like the options that I've got here in interior defensive line. Let's go see what we've got on the cornerback market. Dalen Everett from Georgia, great option. Malik Muhammad, yes. Dakario Davis, but probably too high for him at this point in time. Jalen Kilgore is another one with in terms of the ranking here that I don't fully agree with in terms of having him at 128. I think he's going to go higher than that as well. And then finally, let's kind of look at the wide receiver market, because I want to go into scenario 4 for the Chargers. And that's the wild card scenario. And when I'm talking about all these scenarios, they're all related to what the Chargers could do at 22. So we've talked about the pipe dream scenario in Ioane. We've talked about the probable scenario based on how the board is going to fall, what position that they probably look to attack if they end up sticking at 22. The beneficial scenario, which would mean, okay, Vega's off the board. You don't like the value for some of the edges at 22. Maybe you think if you jumped 4 to 6 spots back that you could get one of them at that point. Do you execute a trade back to, say, with the Cleveland Browns or with the Miami Dolphins to acquire some extra draft capital that you can utilize later on day 3 to recoup some of that? Now we come to the wild card scenario. And again, this is where I know everybody in the chat, as far as talking about the Kenyon Sadiq, or even more recently, the Denzel Boston conversations that have all of a sudden started to pop up. That's the wild card one. And again, the reason that I bring up the wild card is look at what the Chargers, again, were doing in the free agent market. They were in on Alec Pierce and reportedly had offered him more money than what he ended up going back to Indianapolis for. And then when you see what that contract was, you're thinking to yourself, like, well, damn, how much were the Chargers going to be offering for Alec Pierce to get him on the team? They were in on the Rashid Shaheed free agent market before he ended up going back. So they're obviously targeting a wide receiver. And I think this is definitely driven by Mike McDaniel. I definitely think it's meant to give Justin Herbert that legit number 1 option, arguable, however you want to consider it, however you think of Ladd or QJ or the development of Trey Harris, which I think is going to be very big for him long term. But they may have kind of tipped their cap with the way it goes. Now, again, things could totally change after the draft. People have talked about the AJ Brown trade possibility after the draft is over. Who knows? Still could possibly be there. But maybe the Chargers have kind of tipped their cap a little bit to who they're going to do or who they're going to target. So again, that's the wild card scenario. Again, is it a great value pick that you end up picking up for the Chargers if it is a Kenyon Sadiq, or if it is one of the top wide receivers that somehow happens to drop to you? Is it the most popular scenario? No, I think we can all agree that that's not something that we would do. That would be option 4 in this case, if the board fell and all those scenarios were off the table. If you didn't have Ioane, if the edge class or the edge player that you wanted wasn't there and you wanted to execute a trade back, but you couldn't, and somehow or another you had to stick with 22. So this is the scenario that you are left with. It's going to get interesting. It's going to get interesting. I know we love to pigeonhole ourselves sometimes into certain players, and because we're all favorites of theirs and, hope to the heavens that they're going to draft for the Chargers at 22, it just doesn't always work out that way. So you have to just keep that in mind for what this team's already shown in free agency, what the roster currently looks like, what their draft capital is, and to think about whatever possibilities they have. They do have options, even if it means that it's outside of the norm that we want to do. So in looking at this for round 3, I know that was kind of a long-winded answer, but I had to go through the 4 scenarios there. Deion Burks out of Oklahoma, Ted Hurst, who I know a lot of people are high on, Malachi Fields from Notre Dame, Brendan Thompson, who, if you're looking for your speedster, boom, this is pretty much it. And again, I don't agree with this rank here at 116. I think that I think he's going to go a little bit higher than that. I definitely don't think that he's getting out of day 2, no question about it. So if you're hoping that he would drop to a round 4 selection, I don't believe that that's going to happen whatsoever. If it's me, I'm going to go with my original target. And my original target, if I can pull it up correctly, I'm going to go Rashawn Benny here. Yeah. Jim Harbaugh familiarity. Get another presence there in the interior defensive line. Obviously, I know what you built around with bringing in Tomlinson, but with Jamari Caldwell obviously ascending, with the great veteran presence of Teair Tart, you're still going to want to churn the interior defensive line. Fun fact about Joe Ortiz is that you go back over the last, I think this would either be 11 consecutive years, or this year would be 12 consecutive years. You go back that point in time, even all the way back to his time in Baltimore. Essentially, over the last 12 years, every front office that Joe Ortiz has been a part of, they have drafted an interior defensive lineman in either round 4 or higher. And I don't foresee that to change. You've seen that take place even here over the last couple of years with Justin Eboigbe 2 years ago, Jamari Caldwell last year. And wouldn't you know it, Dan Wolkenstein from Chargers Unleashed on location decides to come in and make a cameo appearance for the three selections.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I live.
How's your Wi-Fi? How's your hotel? How is Washington? Why aren't you getting
Wi-Fi's good. Wi-Fi's good. Just got done with breakfast with the fam. A little one is asleep. Wedding will be going off this afternoon. Apologies for being insanely late. I don't know what we're at, but I'm here to help. Let me know what I can do. Jake, appreciate you as always, man. You are holding it down like a boss. I don't know how you do it, but round of applause to you.
I had to learn. Number one, I had to learn some things. For those of you who don't know, there's a reason that Dan and I, majority of the time, it's either Dan doing the live shows himself or us doing it as a pair, because Dan's more technically savvy than I am when it comes to the navigating the pod stuff. So I kind of had to give myself a crash course here over these last couple of episodes. So it's been fun. And I'm glad you're able to join on this. So technically, Dan, this is Mock Draft 1.0.
Let's go.
We're going to go through 3 different iterations of this over the next few weeks. So this is 1.0, just for your refreshment, so you can see who I've selected for the Chargers.
I was going to say, so where are we at?
So it is Akeem Mesidor, because Akeem Mesidor and Ioane fell to 22. I went with a more realistic scenario because I didn't feel that Ioane was going to get to 22 in the first place. So I addressed the edge position there. Come back around at 55. The guard market had really been taken up at that point in time. Jace Pasantis was off the board. Oh my God, why am I forgetting the name all of a sudden? But the guard market had really been taken up in the second round, and Keelan Rutledge was the best option available. In round 3, I decided to address the interior of the defensive line, once again, putting the premium on the trenches, so getting some Michigan familiarity in there with Rashawn Benny. So now we're in round 4, which this would actually be a great time for you to contribute, because now we're kind of in the depth scenarios in terms of positions goes. Wide receivers on the board for depth, corners on the board for depth, tight ends on the board for depth. Anything here, let me take you through, because you're back in here. This is great. Dan saw you angling to draft Benny and said, "Oh, hell no. I need to get in there. I need to get in there and fix this mock draft as soon as I can."
Okay, so real quick. We're now in round 4, correct?
This is round 4, yes.
Round 4, okay. So folks in the chat, first off, let me know, once we get through round 2 and we now have interior offensive line figured out, have like the fire alarms been put out? Are we feeling better right now? Like in this scenario, do they go towards an offensive lineman in free agency before this? Like, where are we at with that?
Also, keep in mind, I was trying to execute a trade down at 55, but the way that the guard market had already been soaked up by that point in time, there were so many already off the board. Kalen Rutledge was the best possible option, and I didn't foresee the Chargers to pass on a guard after round 2. So no trade back. You still have only 5 selections in this particular mock draft.
Got it. Okay. So in this scenario, Jake, are they as is as of March 21st plus Rutledge? Or like in this scenario, do we have another offensive lineman that we signed?
I didn't put it out there. So it's basically just as is who the Chargers have brought in free agency. You know you're obviously going to be drafting one in this case. That's Rutledge. So he's the only offensive lineman that's been added here.
Okay, so through the tea leaves, let's check out. So a couple things to set this up. So one, I feel like wide receiver. Mm-hmm. We've seen the Chargers kind of poke around at the X receiver type. So that could be a possibility if they don't end up trading for one, which I don't know what they'd be trading in terms of assets for it. If they don't end up trading for one, I could see them running it back as is. If you don't see anything happen with QJ, if you don't see an AJ Brown or whatever, like last year's wide receiver group was pretty good. Like there's not really a huge issue there. The one gap we have right now is no Keenan, right? So what do we do there? I'm not sure. So they could go receiver, look for an X receiver that can, get open on his own. I think clearly an offensive line still is on the table. Tight end still on the table, backup. But I wonder from like a Joe Ortiz perspective, Jake, I'll ask you this. Like, you have 5 precious selections this year. Do you spend one of those 5 precious selections on tight end 3? Do you spend it on, like, you only have so much, right? Like in terms of what's needed, they got the interior offensive line, at least the starting one in theory. They got the edge. Those are like the 2 precious scenarios. From there, it's like, I feel like it would be for them anyways, like corner, tackle, guard, receiver, maybe linebackers probably is in the fold as well.
And I'm glad you phrased it this way because this proves the exact point of the trade down scenario. I went through 4 different scenarios for the Chargers. You have the pipe dream scenario with Vega. You have the probable scenario, which if they stuck at 22, what's going to be your best edge player or interior or defensive line player that you're going to address, because considering who's going to be most likely off the board, the trade down scenario to acquire more draft capital, or the wild card scenario that you go with. Is it a skill player with that first round pick? But if you're in this particular scenario here, the way that you phrase that, Dan, is perfect, because if you went this exact same type of way and you weren't able to execute a trade down, your options now are very limited for which ones that you really want to attack. And that's, again, why I feel like when it comes to April 23rd, the trade down scenario is going to be the way to go to acquire more draft capital, to give you more flexibility in the positions that you can get. But the way that the board fell did not allow me, really, in good conscience, to execute a trade down. I was fully coming into this one. I'm kind of pissed off, actually. As much as I want to trade down, the fact that I did not get a chance to get it the way that the board went. But I'm happy so far with the way that it's gone. So if it's you, Dan, 2 selections left.
And what do we have so far? Well, we went edge, guard.
Keem Mesidor at edge, Kalen Rutledge at guard, and then Rashawn Benny for interior defensive line depth.
So let's look at the interior offensive line again.
Which I know everybody and their mother is talking about Bo Stevens being there at 133, which of course is another option. Do you address if you're addressing the trenches again, do you do your developmental backup center at this point in time? Probably not the way that the value is here. Probably not.
Someone's asking, is Justin Jolly off the board?
Let's find out. Let me just get rid of these filters. He's still there. 129.
Okay, so that goes to the question of, is that position valued that high this year? Remember, you went and got your Kohler, right? Like, there's your blocking tight end.
Yep.
You got your Gaston, there's your catching tight end. Kohler could
Is he
probably
your
be
tight
a
end
little both.
3?
He probably would be tight end 3, and is it worth that pick this year specifically? Personally, I don't think they do that. I think honestly, they probably go like UDFA if they're needing to go tight end 3. Let's see. Go to receiver real quick. Let's see what they got there.
Mm-hmm.
So my mind's going either receiver, corner, interior offensive line. Those are the kind of 3 positions I'm looking at. Jacoby Lane could be fun.
I mean, Brennan Thompson should give you everything that you want in terms of what you really need, from the speed aspect, from the possibility as a returner, some of the versatility that he brings to the board. But again, I've been trying to be as realistic as possible through these first 3 rounds, and I just don't foresee him actually being on the board still in round 4. I think someone's going to look at him and say, no, we love that speed from him. We got to get some. Yeah. We got to get that before day 3.
Is Kevin Coleman there?
I think Coleman should still be here. Yep, but kind of further down the board as far as the value goes.
Yeah.
Do you attack that right now?
I like. So Brennan Thompson's one that was on my. I have him selected in like asterisk, right? Yep. You could go later for receiver. There's still a bunch of dudes out there. Like, I like Bryce Lane out of North Dakota State. You could probably get him a round or 2 later. Want to go real crazy? Kendrick Law, Jeff Caldwell, probably late day 3.
I think Thompson might be your best scenario. Even if I don't foresee it playing out this way,
yeah,
I think this is your best choice here.
Yeah, and someone said it in the chat, I think McDaniel would love this. And so when I went through my guys so far, like of the late day 2, day 3, Thompson was one of the ones I would select. Are there any offensive line interior that you think they would want that could be impact?
I mean, Bo Stevens would be the top option here. 100% if he fell. I think, again, you bring in someone that has that ass kicker type of mentality that Iowa is known to breed inside their interior offensive linemen. You already have one in Kalen Rutledge. If you're to basically say Bo Stevens is your quasi depth, or when Cole Strange starts playing poorly, to replace. But again, with only 5 picks, is that the route that you go with who's on the board here? I don't think that in this particular scenario that if you stay with 5 picks that you draft another center. I just think that there's more positions of value to attack the way that this board has fallen here. DJ Campbell is another option, but I don't think that he's available here or worth the 4th round selection at this point in time.
Do you not like the guy at the top?
Bo Stevens?
Like, are you saying you think he's going to be center?
No. I'm not saying that he's going to be center. I'm just talking about the interior offensive line options. But Bo Stevens, you couldn't go wrong with a Bo Stevens for a Jim Harbaugh offense. But again, to your point, do you attack that depth? And in which case, because you've already addressed the offensive line, I don't.
So as weird as this sounds, like we all know the answer here. Like, we all know what the biggest Achilles heel was all last year and the year before. Like, is the answer to bring in a quote unquote backup possibility, or maybe a potentially starting guard? I kind of think, again, if we're going in the scenario that they haven't gotten anything else, I feel like you have to do that. As much as a wide receiver would be great, as much as another corner would be great, like, we all know the reason and the downfall of this Chargers team. And so if it means you have to buy insurance, right, and a Bo Stevens, that's probably the angle I would go. But that's just me.
Let's go with that. And you know what?
You can live at night. You can live with yourself at night knowing that you went and got yourself. This is
mock draft 1.0. We got 2 more iterations of this. This is not the Bible. This is not the gospel. There's plenty of scenarios here that the Chargers could do. The best part about this is, Dan, when I spoke about the premium of what the Chargers are going to invest in, that was the trenches. Look at this. Akeem Mesidor, Rashawn Benny on the defensive trenches, Kalen Rutledge, Bo Stevens in the offensive trenches. I'd say you've done a pretty good job in that particular scenario. Not bad in terms of, going back to the message that Jim Harbaugh put forth as far as tip of the spear, investing properly where it's needed, and what you've seen these other teams that have flourished in the playoffs and the Super Bowl have the best players at, honestly. So,
what's interesting? You know what's interesting? I was going to ask you. So, like, typically, and this is I think a fascinating storyline. Typically, from like looking at just general NFL draft, big boards and what fans would like to see their team, there's so much urge for like the sizzle, right? They want that like amazing edge. They want the corner, the speedy wide receiver, the running back. Like they want those types, like the playmakers. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Chargers fan base this year, like, not that they don't care about those things, but like right now, like the sexy pick for Chargers fans is just like 330 plus pounds of whatever. I don't care who it is. Someone that could be between the defense and Justin Herbert.
Yep.
And so like, and you're in just what you had said, like how we've done this so far. Like it might not be the quote unquote sexy mock for most teams, but for the Chargers, it's like, this is case 1, 2, and 3 of why they need to get better at these positions.
Sure.
So I wouldn't mind this at all.
All right. Now you get basically the wild card, round 6. You could pretty much go any direction that you'd want with who is left here on the board. Tanner Gazole, who I was talking about earlier on in the show when we were talking about the possibility for tight end. Again, I don't think that he's going to drop this far. I think his catch radius and what he's been able to do in terms of his overall production over the last couple of years, he just has terrific hands. And again, it kind of feeds into a little bit of the Oronde Gadsden type mold, Dan, that we were talking about last year when we were going through this. It's very similar to that. Can he block? No, he can't. But can he catch the football? You're damn right. So I think that would be a nice option here.
Stay here real quick. We have somebody asking for Goldman's grades.
Oh, I mean the grades. The grades are good. The grades are good. This would be the ultimate trench warfare draft if you ended up making this selection.
Dude, can you imagine? Like you just take on the chin this year, you get all guards, and then like finally, like you can go sexy next year in the crazy and apparently the loaded 2027.
Right. The ultimate trench warfare draft. You address both sides of the line, and maybe you do end up executing an AJ Brown trade or finding another wide receiver. Do you hold on to Quentin Johnson for another year? Do you execute a trade for him to get an additional draft pick or a player-for-player swap at some point down the line? Whatever that may be.
You got Keaton Mitchell, right? Like I think that's an underrated value sign in terms of like impact made on the field.
Mm-hmm.
You're big in Charlie Kohler, who I think is going to be massive. You bring in the fullback from Miami, who I think is also going to be impact. So we talk about like high impact in game-to-game situations. Yes, you're not getting the sexy quote-unquote picks in the draft. You're not getting that stud wide receiver. You got the edge player, but to me, like this is the way where it's like to hell with the sexiness. Like I want someone who's going to help me win games.
Right.
And also, like right now, the reason
I was just going to say, also, this ain't happening. Oscar Delp is not dropping all the way to rank 215. So let's just pretend he's not there.
So Jake, where would you go? So you got like realistically, right? You got all trenches. Are you going weapon for Chris O'Leary? Are you going that shiny new toy for Mike McDaniel? Or are you just going to stick with like the shit that we've seen go wrong for so long and fix it?
Whoever made the Glubin selection, you're a genius, honestly, because I foresee the Chargers, especially if they're able to get more draft capital, that you're going to end up getting your future center to develop behind Tyler Biadasz. I do foresee Joe Ortiz to start churning the depth of the roster once again and have that be a position of target. But God, this would be so fun if you just ended the draft like this with your interior offensive line picks being Kalen Rutledge, Bo Stevens, and Glubin as the players that you have brought in to build out your offensive line. So I think it would just be a fun and almost hilarious mock draft when you get a chance to see that final picture. But let's just see what other options we've got first. So let's go to corner, because I definitely believe that one way or another, whether it's with 5 picks or 6 or 7, that this is going to be a position that they're going to target. Let's see, what actual selection? We're here at 204. And yeah, I already see 2 of my favorites here. I don't believe the ranks here that they show. But Jadon Canada, Dan, I think would be a terrific addition for Clinkscale in that defense, for the work that he did in Oregon secondary, for his coverage ability. I can't remember the exact number, but I put it out on the player profile of him. I think the QBR was about 33 when he was targeted. I mean, it was ridiculous. But he's a little bit of like plays bigger than his size actually is. But Andre Fuller, on the flip side of things, he's a much bigger type of corner at 6'2". If it's me, I would probably lean towards Canada in this particular case. That's just me. But if we went on the flip side to your wide receiver, tight end, let's get the corner out of there. Just show you the skill positions. Tanner Cazole was the one I was talking to you about. Much more in that Rondé Gadsden type of form. So God, that would just be ridiculously sick if you ended up building out the tight end room like that. Tyron Montgomery out of John Carroll University. You talk about production, Dan, for a small school. He's got it. Undersized for the prototypical wide receiver that you want, but he's got production, no question about it. Kendrick Law was another one that I know that you actually were high on.
Yep, talked about him earlier. But I think this might be a little. No, this is probably right around right sweet spot. So I think we could probably make this selection if we answer this question, and we can go from there. Are we wanting an impact player for this year, or is this for 2027 plus? What would you like? Where do you think what would you think they would do? Because I think there's 2 different avenues that they would go.
I mean, let's be realist here. Round 6, there's not as good of a chance that they're going to be an impact player for 2026. However, RJ Mickens ended up being pretty damn good for being a 6th round pick, even in limited snaps. And he potentially is your future when the days of Tony Jefferson are no longer on this roster. But so that was more of a future pick that ended up having to get fast tracked and worked out well. But like as soon as the selection came in, everyone said, wow, I can't believe that he was available then. Like people had like 3rd round grades on that guy. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's kind of what I'm looking at. So like if you think about like Quentin's probably not going to be on this team past this year. Would you agree? Correct.
So are we okay with KLS, Trey Harris, Ladd McConkey as your trio? Like, do you think that's good enough?
You're talking about for 2027?
Yeah.
No, but I think that you would find a way to address that in different factors, free agency, or you spend a 1st round pick on a wide receiver next year. I would probably think that they might go. This might be like a Clinkscale O'Leary thing, because this is the sweet spot for where they drafted all their dudes, and all of them, like they don't even spend like premium, right? Like Cam Hart, Tarheeb Still. This is right their sweet spot. So somebody in the comments, who can run with Waddle? So do we have is there a speed demon here? Canada ran a 4.4.
How tall was he?
Tall enough. Not your ideal big bodied corner that you like to see, but he gets the work done.
Yeah, but also Jalen Waddle isn't a big body receiver either. So that's like the archetype you're trying to solve for. You already have the Cam Hart body type. You already have the Dante Jackson body type. Like
this is essentially your Benjamin Satan juiced replacement.
I'd be fine with going corner here, but what do you think? Whatever you like.
Yeah. I might be a little bit biased because I think that Canada is one of the better day 3 selections that you can get for corner on the market whenever you choose to attack it. So yeah, let's wrap it up with that.
Okay. And someone said, I think you mentioned it too, like could we see the Chargers trade away 2027 pick for an AJ Brown? I have a hard time believing that they're going to trade away current assets. I just don't see that. I'm surprised that they didn't like your Caleb Knowledge pick.
Same.
They haven't graded 74. That's why.
Again, it's the overall board that they're really giving it to.
Yeah.
And not taking into account of all the guards that were taken at that point in time, that Keon Rutledge was really the best one available. And then if you didn't take one then, you would have been exactly hosed. You've been screwed. You've been hosed.
And you did this to yourself, Joe Ortiz. You did this to yourself. Like this is always the most likely scenario now is they're most likely going to have to either reach early or that's probably the most likely scenario.
Yeah.
Like if they don't get a guard in round 2 or 1, it's going to be like DEFCON 3 by the time round 3 comes.
Yes. So tear this mock draft up, pull it apart, however you want to do it. Flame us in the comments for what you think, because every single mock draft is completely wrong, and we totally understand. But this is why we're doing 3 iterations of this. This is mock draft 1.0, and we again, given the 4 scenarios that I was telling everybody in the chat, those are the 4 scenarios that you really just have to remind yourself that when it comes to the Chargers for pick 22, they have a plethora of ways that they can go with it. Depending on what's available to them, what's on the board, can they execute a trade down? Or are you going to say, screw all that and go with the wild card skill position player that's going to most likely be on the board at 22? Time will tell on that one.
I do think everyone, I think maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I feel like this is like every year. Well, maybe not. I think most want a trade down in round 1 this year. Like I think trade down would be most advantageous for the Chargers, given edge is deep. You can get one day 2. Guard, there's one that's a round 1 guy. Otherwise, punt it to day 2. And the position that they need aren't really day 1 positions. So like, I mean, this is Christmas for Jake every year. If they could trade down. Yeah, I think this is the way if they could.
I think if you're in a scenario where you can trade back from 22 or 55, either one, you're in a good position. You're either getting yourself an additional, second round, third round pick, whatever it is, depending on how far you fall back at 22, or if you trade back at 55, you're giving yourself your day 3 pick that you traded away for a Dafe Owe, and you're giving yourself another option there, which again, Joe Ortiz in the 5th round has been pretty good, not too shabby. So I don't think you can go wrong with either of those trade down scenarios, but it speaks to, as Dan said, Joe Ortiz putting himself in this particular scenario with how the team has built themselves on free agency, the positions that that you have kind of that red line to address before you get to X round. And this is what we come up with for mock draft 1.0 for Chargers Unleashed.
So, Jake, I want to ask you this. So, let's say this is the way, which we know it won't be because they never go the way that we think. But let's say they go this direction. What is your solution to the other needs of the team, like depth at linebacker, potentially safety? Since I think we're kind of technically calling Derwin a slot corner at this point. Center depth, running back, I think they got covered, but receiver potentially.
I mean, Emmanuel McNeill-McWarren would be like the other wild card pick that the Chargers could do at 22 to say like, oh, safety's going to be the first selection off the board for them in the first round. Again, not the popular pick, not something that anybody would really think about doing. But I think especially if they're able to execute a trade back, I think safety is definitely a target for them. If Denzel Perryman was not brought back, I think that they would have targeted linebacker for sure. I still think they're going to target it again, especially if they get more draft capital, because this linebacker class is deep, it is talented, and just from the standpoint that you still don't know what you don't have yet with Junior Colson, and that Denzel Perryman's only signed on a 1-year deal, it's better to be 1 year early than 1 year behind. So I could definitely see them targeting linebacker here, because whether we're talking about Josiah Trotter, Torrin York, Dan, one of your alumni in Kayshawn Elliott. In terms of those downhill thumper linebackers, like you can find those for sure.
It's going to be interesting, man. And it's a weird position to be in where I'm looking at the first 4 picks of your draft being all trenches and you're feeling good about it.
Yeah. I feel fine.
So talk to me about your Rashawn Benny
logic.
Yeah, because like they when they got the big beef, right? They already got that in free agency. Jamar Caldwell is an absolute stud. Deshaun Hand's already there. We don't know. Boygby's making promises, right? Like he's looking promising, I should say. 3rd round pick on that position, I was a little surprised to see it. So walk me through that.
Well, a number of things went into it. Number one, I kind of brought up that old stat of Joe Ortiz that for the last 11, 12 consecutive years, dating all the way back to his time in Baltimore, he has addressed interior defensive line at either the 4th round or above. And we saw that 2 years ago with the Boygby pick. We saw it last year with the Jabari Caldwell pick. So I definitely think that same type of mentality is going to follow this coming draft. At either round 4 or above, he's going to address that interior defensive line. We went over some of the wide receiver scenarios to say, like, okay, who could be that if that's not going to be the wild card pick for round 1? And I can't remember off the top of my head who was still on the board. But given just where I thought that you could have needed a little bit more help, whether we're talking about wide receiver depth at this point in time or we're talking about interior defensive line depth, I thought that the interior defensive line depth needed a little bit more push behind it. Michigan familiarity with Jim Harbaugh there with the Rashawn Benny pick. So, a couple factors went into the logic there.
I love it. I think the Medsdar pick at 22. I think it's smart. I think that's the only. I think it's the only position you can go, maybe other than safety. If the Penn State kid isn't there, and he just probably won't be, if we're being honest.
We'll see. Mock Draft 1.0 for Chargers Unleashed in the books. Thank you guys so much for joining. Of course, feel free to critique, flame the draft as much as you want in the comments. No, no harm, no foul. Again, we're going to be back with the 2nd and 3rd iteration of this as we get closer to April 23rd. Thank you all so much for joining the show. Saturday morning mock draft. Gotta love it. Dan Wolkenstein obviously making a surprise cameo live from Washington.
Sorry.
Shouldn't you be getting ready right now for the wedding?
Yep.
Okay, so no better time to end the pod for Dan Wolkenstein than right now. So appreciate you finding the time to jump on, man. Excited for you to get back to California, as I know you've only spent about 3 hours in California over the last 2 weeks or so. But we're going to get back to it this week for sure. So excited to have you back.
Yeah, thank you guys. Sorry for being late. Sorry for being MIA. It's been a whirlwind of the last couple of weeks. But I think starting next week, hopefully, fingers crossed, I will be all hands on deck ready for NFL drafts and Chargers Unleashed content because it's going to get fun. We got some fun stuff ahead. Jake, I don't know if we're going to spill the beans yet, but let's just keep it out. Let's keep it in the jar. We'll be in touch, folks. We'll be in touch.
Yes, sir. All right. Thanks for everyone who joined. Appreciate every single one of you. We will be back next week with Chargers Unleashed, most likely another live show as well. So feel free to tune in during that point in time. But until next time, Dan Wolkenstein, Jake Kapner from Chargers Unleashed. Thanks so much for tuning in.